In this tutorial, I introduced the Unity particle system for creating special effects such as snow, rain, dust, smoke, fire, and much, much more. Let's start by adding a floor to our object here, to our project, by going to the 3D object plane. And let's stretch this out. And now let's throw in a material onto that floor there. Any material will do. I have some materials here, and that'll work. Now go up to Game Object, Effects, Particle System. And what's nice about this is it just shows you the particle system right off the bat without having to do anything. So here's the source. Make sure that the transform has been reset to the origin point. And then you have this particle effect player. You can pause it, stop it, restart it. If you lose this window, you can also double click here on particle system. And then that should bring that back up again. So let's go through some of these settings here. Probably the best way to learn this is to follow along with me and just experiment. Okay, so the duration will tell you how long the particle effect will work. I have this looped, so let's stop it and restart it. And you'll notice that there are, I think it's 5 seconds, and then it will stop. And I recommend that you just keep it on looping so you can really explore these various settings. Start delay will delay the start of the effect. The lifetime will tell you how many seconds the particles will last. And play it. Notice these particles are blinking out after 1 second. I'm going to put 15 seconds here, and then we can see all these other effects in motion here. The start speed is just that, how fast these particles will move. A higher number, they move faster. Like 0.2 means they'll go very slow. Won't get very far before they basically decay based on your lifetime setting here. Let's stop it and start it again so we can see those effects better. So the start speed of 5 is what it starts with. That's probably good for the demonstration here. The size is the size of the particles. So again, large numbers just kind of gives you a fog or a smoke or haze. 0.1 will give you little tiny particles. Again, experiment with different settings here. Notice that this is like a molecule almost, very, very small and very fast. So let's turn down the speed. And now we can see those better. Probably 1 is the best value to see everything else. You can also rotate these particles. You may not notice the rotation till later we add some materials to this to change the shape and size of these. You can even change the flip rotation. Again, you may not notice much difference here. Let's do a 0.2 on the size and see if we can see any rotation. But as you change the shape and size of those, then you'll notice these rotations here. The gravity modifier is maybe the most interesting, and I think you should spend some time with this. Essentially, the default of 0 is basically no gravity at all. So there's no gravity affecting those particles. But if you change this, just about any number, gravity will affect them, and they're essentially falling through the floor there. Where it gets interesting is if you open up the drop down under the gravity modifier and do a curve. Notice that they're going out and then they're falling down very, very slowly. But you can change the shape of this curve to get different effects. And there's some modifiers that are built in here. Notice that these are going out and then they're falling through. So gravity is affecting them. This is distance over gravity. So notice as the distance gets further, the gravity increases. These are the positive values, negative values. So play around with this. You can also right click on the line and add a key. So I would recommend spending a bit of time exploring different settings here. Try to get these particles to behave like real particles. You might want to make the size bigger so you can see these better, and then zoom out, and you'll notice that they're coming out and then gravity is hitting them. Also, it's a random here, so it's just, you can get different kinds of effects with this gravity. Now they're coming up and then the gravity is hitting them. So that's the best way to explore this, is just to experiment with different line segments and line shapes to see what it does to the gravity. And then find something that maybe is easy to work with. Maybe they're coming out and they're falling down. And then other settings that are important. There's a lot of settings here, but the other ones that are important are rigid body I'd keep there. The maximum particles will tell you how many particles are in that loop. If we do 1, it'll only develop 1 particle, there it is, and then it won't do any more. Right? And then if you have it on looping, it'll just do 1 and then 1 and 1 and 1. 1,000 is the default, but you can go up quite high. And again, sometimes you'll need to stop it and play it to see that it's going to put out 24 particles. If I turn off the loop, it'll do 24 and then it will stop. If the loop is on, it'll do a set of 24 and then another set of 24. So there's the first set of 24 that are coming out. Gravity's hitting them as they go out. There's also a random gravity setting here, so you can make things more random. So the second set of 24 will come out at some specified time. It's probably a setting up here. Other settings here that you want to explore are the emission. You can change the rate at which the particles appear over time, or you can do a rate over distance. Again, as these values change, the rate will change. And then you can also do this with a curve as well. And notice that now I have 2 curves, and I can adjust the rate at which those particles are generated over time or over distance. Then the shape is very interesting. You can change the shape at which these particles are generated, including a sphere, a hemisphere. Let's stop this and play it so you can see each of these. That's the hemisphere. An interesting one is a box, much like a chimney, and then notice you can change the shape of this box. Let's actually turn our gravity modifier off. And let's set that to 0. And then notice that I can rotate this and have those particles come out at any angle that I want. So definitely this is good for like a muffler in a car or maybe a chimney, putting out smoke. Rain will obviously just be a flat surface. It rains everywhere. But you want to try out some of these different shapes here. A mesh, kind of interesting. Sprite. And the cone is a popular one. And then again, you can adjust the direction that cone is producing those particles. Others of interest. The way this works is you'll click on this shape to close it. You can also change the velocity over the lifetime. So in other words, as it gets further, the rate at which they do something changes. You can limit the velocity over the lifetime. You can change the emitter speed over the lifetime, and so on. So again, experiment with these. You can also change the material here, which I'll show you in another tutorial. I have a tutorial where you'll actually create fire, and that way you can kind of see how by changing the material and the texture even, you can get all kinds of different effects. But all of them work the same, using these settings here to give you the kind of particle animation that you need to make it look realistic.